when I fainted and was taken to the hospital. Thomas was celebrating his first love's birthday with her. He said, "Juliet, you still haven't changed. You're full of lies." Feeling completely disheartened, I decided to stop groveling. I hugged Dr. Simon behind me, grabbed his tie, leaned close to his ear, and said softly, "Handsome guy, you smell so good. Do you want a brand new girlfriend?" Later, Thomas finally thought of me. He came to beg for my forgiveness in the heavy rain. But I was too weak to open the door because of what Dr. Simon had done to me. Simon put one arm around my waist and handed him a love application form with the other hand, saying, "Take this, fill it out, and wait in line." Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. The beeping sounds in the hospital filled my ears, and there were sighs everywhere from the patient's family members. I hid in the corridor, looking at the countless words of peace carved on the wall. I drank wine and mustered up the courage. I called Thomas again and again. Do. Finally, on the 25th try, the phone was answered. Just as I was about to speak, Thomas spoke first. "Juliet, I'm at a welcome birthday party for a friend. Can I call you back later? Stop being naughty." I'm hanging up. Thomas's tone was irritable, different from his usual gentleness. "Wait a minute. Just for a moment. Thomas, I have a brain tumor. Can you come to the hospital and pick me up? I'm scared." I tried my best to hold back my tears and said this sentence as calmly as possible. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. "Juliet, stop testing me with this trick. I'm just celebrating Helen's birthday with her. And you're making such a big fuss. Just die if you want. You've always been as strong as an ox. You could have come up with a better excuse." I shook my head desperately, and the tears finally couldn't stop flowing down. "Thomas, I'm begging you. Believe me just this once. What I said is true." Before I could finish, I heard a sweet and delicate female voice on the other end. "Thomas, what's wrong? Everyone is waiting for you. Come and cut the cake." It was Helen, Thomas's first love whom he had always longed for but couldn't have. Thomas didn't reply to me, and the phone was quickly hung up. The busy tone echoed in the empty stairwell. My emotions completely broke down, and I started crying loudly. So after 10 years, it turned out that my meticulous care and my constant obedience were no match for just one sentence from Helen. "I'm back." Thomas clearly has two eyes, but he can only look in one direction. I sat on the steps, drinking wine and numbly stuffing cake into my mouth. Today was also Thomas's birthday, and we had made an appointment to spend it together in the evening. But he stood me up. It was he who confessed to me first, vowing to treat me well. No matter what happened in the future, I would be his first choice. But at that time, I never imagined that I was just a substitute for Helen. He broke his promise. "I'm sorry, Thomas. It turned out that it was just my wishful thinking. It won't happen again in the future. Even if I wanted it to, it might not be possible." Creak. The door in the corridor was pushed open. Someone gently patted me on the shoulder. "Are you okay?" I stared blankly at the floor and replied perfunctorily, "Yeah." Suddenly, a slender and fair hand with distinct knuckles held a piece of paper and presented it in front of me. "Wipe your face. You look like a little cat. If there's anything bothering you, tell me about it." The voice above my head was cold and gentle. I couldn't help but look up. It was my attending doctor, Simon, but he was wearing casual clothes now, so it seemed he had finished work. "You ran away so quickly just now that I didn't have a chance to give you the examination report." He rubbed his hands and naturally sat down beside me. "Anyway, it's like this now. What's the point of looking at the report?" "Oh, then what is worth looking at?" I was feeling bold due to the alcohol. I grabbed Simon's tie and said in a coquettish voice, "You are worth looking at." I also sniffed his scent. "You smell so good. Handsome guy. Do you want a brand new girlfriend?" Simon was obviously startled by me. His body trembled, and he stood there stunned, staring straight at me. I felt guilty under his gaze, and half of my muddled head cleared up. I was just about to let go of my hand and apologize to him, but Simon suddenly pulled me into his arms and leaned close to my ear. "Are you serious? Once you agree, there's no turning back." My cheeks suddenly turned hot, but my mouth was still running wild. And when I thought of Simon's incredibly handsome face, "I'm going to die anyway. What am I still holding on to for Thomas?" What moral bottom line do I need? Who cares about regret? I want to have some fun even if I die. The next second, my chin was pinched. I met Simon's burning gaze. Then came a long and lingering kiss. Simon's home wasn't far from the hospital. I was drunk and clamored to go home with him. As soon as we entered the door, I started hugging the trash can and vomiting violently. Simon sat on the sofa and gently patted my back without saying a word. Finished vomiting. Go take a shower. His voice was calm, as if we had known each other for a long time. No, I don't want to. I'm not taking a shower. I started going crazy and vented my dissatisfaction with Thomas on Simon. I didn't want to be obedient anymore. Simon frowned. Suddenly, he bent down and picked me up in his arms. I instinctively wrapped my arms around his neck. At that moment, my heart seemed to jump out of my chest. You have to take a shower. You've been in the hospital all day and drank so much wine. After taking a shower, you can sleep well. The sound of the shower was rushing in the bathroom, and most of my drunkenness wore off. I stared at the toiletries Simon had placed aside. Strawberry-scented shampoo, white peach-scented conditioner, milk-scented repair lotion. Don't ask. I'm thinking. I came out wiping my dripping hair. Simon had changed into a thin t-shirt and was sitting on the edge of the sofa. Your drunkenness has worn off. Yeah. I put on a bathrobe and leaned against him, casually placing one hand on his shoulder. I could feel his originally relaxed body tense up suddenly. It's getting late. Go to sleep. Simon moved aside a bit, and his tone was a little flustered. I curled the corner of my mouth. Okay. Let's sleep. Let's sleep together. As soon as I finished speaking, Simon's ears turned red. He stared at me blankly, his eyes looking wet. Juliet, stop messing around. I know you're in a bad mood, but don't do this to yourself. His voice was clear but seemed to be suppressing something. I leaned closer to him, getting very close. I could feel Simon's scorching breath lingering around my nose. I don't regret it. As soon as I finished speaking, everything around me spun. Simon suddenly pressed me down on the sofa. He protected my head with one hand, and the other hand lingered around my neck. Juliet. Juliet, he murmured, repeating my name over and over again. His eyes were filled with eagerness. I reached out and touched his Adam's apple that was bobbing up and down. Juliet, you shouldn't have provoked me. Before I could react, the next second, his burning kiss slid down all the way. I was so dizzy and disoriented that my mind wasn't clear. All I knew was that it was Simon in front of me. My fingers were numb, and only the moments of his touch on my skin could relieve the feeling. Juliet, call my name. His voice was urgent and hoarse. I was so tired that I wrapped my hands around his neck. Simon, wait a minute. Fill out this form. I picked up the phone on the coffee table and sent Simon a form. Simon looked frustrated at being interrupted and stared at the form on the phone. Love application form. Everything seemed normal at first, but there was one item. Length. Simon looked up and happened to meet my mischievous smile. Oh. Before I could react, everything around me spun again. Simon picked me up around the waist and carried me into the bedroom. He buried his head in my neck and said with a smile, before accepting the goods, let's go through a trial process. When I woke up the next day, Simon wasn't by my side. I had been pretending to be good beside Thomas for so long, and this was the first time I had done something like this. I was really a bit tired, but it was a handsome guy, so it was worth it. I looked around the room and saw my clothes from yesterday neatly arranged on the chair by the bed. He was quite attentive. I mumbled to myself as I put on my clothes. Click. Simon came back. He was carrying a big bag of fried dough sticks and sesame seed cakes. Being able to see a handsome guy and fried dough sticks as soon as I woke up made me feel energetic. Simon pressed my head and said softly, what are you thinking about? Come out and have breakfast. These are your favorites. I sat at the dining table and happily ate the fried dough sticks and sesame seed cakes. I hadn't eaten them for a long time. After being with Thomas, I never ate them again because he didn't like them. Suddenly, I thought of something and said with an oily mouth, Dr. Simon, how did you know that I like fried dough sticks? Simon brought out a cup of freshly ground soy milk from the kitchen and placed it in front of me. You said it last night. Oh, did I? I don't remember. Simon's usually plain and handsome face suddenly showed a mischievous smile. Juliet, do you really want me to tell you the details? My face instantly turned red, and I buried my head in embarrassment to drink the soy milk. After having enough to eat and drink, I lay on the sofa patting my stomach and looking at Simon, who was cleaning the table. Dr. Simon, I thought you doctors didn't eat such greasy food. After all, it's not healthy. Simon didn't look up and focused on cleaning the table. Eating something greasy in the morning can promote the secretion of bile and help digest fat. He sounded much more confident. I looked at the time. It was time to go back to school for my part-time job. Sigh. Even though I'm almost dying, I still have to go to school and work. Thomas and I were both orphans originally, but I wasn't as lucky as Thomas. When I became an adult, my wealthy biological parents found me. As I packed my bag, I lamented my hard life. I don't know when Simon stood beside me and grabbed my wrist. What? You want to run away after having your fun? Simon raised his eyebrows and pressed me down on the sofa. I panicked immediately. Oh, what about the promised trial? Simon looked at me with a serious expression and didn't say a word, just staring straight at me. I felt uncomfortable being stared at and started looking for excuses to run away. Aren't you going to work? Isn't the hospital very busy? I took a leave of absence. Well, I still have to work part-time. How much is your salary? I'll transfer it to you. Oh, then, bro, let's see your strength. As soon as I finished speaking, everything around me spun. Simon put his hands on either side of me. It was the same position as last night. I looked at Simon's handsome face and couldn't say a word. Dude, I meant to see your financial strength. Why does a handsome guy need someone to take responsibility for him? I rolled my eyes, cleared my throat, and said to him righteously, I just remembered that I have a class today and need to sign in. My lips were suddenly blocked. Simon's kiss was forceful and didn't allow for refusal. After a while, I felt Simon's hands that had been tightly holding me loosen. He lowered his eyes, and after a while, he said softly, You still have to go to class. When I arrived at the dormitory, the door happened to open. It was my wealthy girlfriend Frida. Frida crossed her arms and leaned against the door with a mischievous smile. You've got some romantic luck. Your cheeks are as red as those on the Qinghai Tibet Plateau, and your eyes are shining. Oh, you noticed. I pushed her aside and walked straight to the table and lay down. I was really tired. Oh, there really is something going on. No wonder Thomas has been sending me messages looking for you. Also, Helen is back. Frida observed my expression as she spoke. Seeing that I showed no reaction, she felt relieved and started teasing me again. We all know why Helen came back. Only that guy Thomas is kept in the dark. I didn't pay any attention to him at all. I knew you. As Frida spoke, she held the phone screen in front of my face. There were more than 100 missed calls on the screen. Ding. My phone received a message. It was Simon's resume. Love resume. Wow. Such a handsome guy. God has finally opened his eyes. Juliet, you've finally stopped being a doormat. Frida took my phone and enlarged the resume photo, laughing very unrestrainedly. Just as I was about to explain something, Frida's expression suddenly changed, and her tone wasn't as excited as before. Wait, I think I know this person. Isn't he the young master of that group? I was confused by Frida's reaction. Oh, isn't he a doctor? Juliet held her chin with her hand and stared intently at the screen. I'm not mistaken. My family has cooperated with their company, and I've met him a few times. Besides, with his handsome face and cold demeanor, how could I mistake him for someone else? Could it be that he likes cosplay? I was at a loss for words. Did I really get involved with a real tycoon? Frida smiled with a twisted mouth. Juliet, you were so determined before, saying that you didn't care about being a president's wife and that you wanted to be with that jerk Thomas forever. What about that now? I ignored her and looked down at Simon's resume. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, and strong. Not bad. He's very excellent. I didn't like tycoons before and always regarded Thomas as a treasure. Now I realize that I was being pretentious before. After class, I received a message from Simon asking me to go out for dinner with him. I poked Frida and indicated that I was leaving first. Just as I reached the door, Mark called out to me. Juliet, Thomas and Helen are at the school gate. Oh, I replied coldly, but I still took steps forward. Sigh. As expected, you still can't let go of Thomas. Mark's tone was contemptuous. He knew very well what kind of person Helen was. But he also looked down on me. Since I had a crush on Thomas in high school, he had always looked down on me. No matter how much I explained, they still looked down on me. When I was almost at the school gate, I saw Helen and Thomas standing beside the guard room. I lowered my head and walked quickly, trying to avoid them. In the remaining short life, I just want to be happy. Juliet, you're here. Don't get me wrong. Juliet, we played late together yesterday. Helen was worried about me, so she stayed at my place for the night. Helen's voice was sickly sweet. She wasn't like this when I met her in the cafeteria last time. Juliet, I want you to back off. In the cafeteria, Frida and I were lowering our heads and trying hard to eat the fried rice. We reluctantly looked up. It was Helen. Helen looked down at me haughtily, and her lowered eyes were full of disdain. Back off. Thomas is quite popular. Helen smiled upon hearing this. Of course Thomas is popular, but his heart only belongs to me. Pfft. He is popular, but a cesspool is also a popular check-in place for flies. You. Helen changed from her previous noble, cold and innocent image. Her face couldn't help but contort, and she stared at me viciously. Juliet, just you wait. After saying that, she turned around and left, leaving Frida and me laughing uncontrollably. So this was what she meant by, just you wait. Last time, I snorted coldly and looked up, just meeting Thomas's eyes filled with a hint of anger. Why are you here? Thomas's tone was cold and vigilant. Do you own the school gate? Can't I walk through it? Crazy. I was too lazy to pay attention to them and walked straight towards Simon's car parked not far away without looking sideways. I had just taken 2 steps when my wrist was firmly grabbed by Thomas. Where are you going? Where were you last night? I struggled hard but couldn't break free. Thomas, what's wrong with you? We've already broken up. Thomas turned a deaf ear to my shouting and dragged me towards the nearby parking lot. He dragged me to the front of the car and pinned me against the car door with his backhand. Juliet, there's a limit to everything. Thomas, are you crazy? Since we've broken up, have I offended you in any way? This was really weird. Who is he? Huh? Who? I was confused by what Thomas said. Slap. Thomas threw a stack of photos in front of the car. They were photos of the backs of Simon and me holding hands. They were obviously taken secretly, and it must have been Helen. Thomas held my hand even more tightly. The veins on his neck bulged, and his tone was violent. Juliet, I've said it. Now I can give you everything except love. As long as you tolerate Helen, I can marry you. For a moment, I was a bit stunned. In the past 4 years, in front of me, Thomas had always been gentle and restrained. I had never seen him so angry and anxious about anything. Anger, grievance, sorrow, and patience. All kinds of emotions were intertwined in Thomas's eyes. I finally understood. This was the real Thomas. Before, I naively believed that Thomas's heart could be warmed. It turned out that it could indeed be warmed. However, the person who warmed his calm and cold heart would never be me. Thomas, I'll say this one last time. We've broken up. I don't care what happens to your Helen in the future. And I don't care about you either. You and Helen won't have me as an obstacle. You can be carefree, sweet, and unrestrained as you like. There's no need to make such a great sacrifice. Thomas, you can't have it all. I tried my best to suppress my grievance and raised my head, not wanting to lose the momentum. But the next second, my chin was pinched, and I was forced to meet Thomas's eyes. Thomas frowned and said word by word, "You can't do it." I didn't want to argue with him. As soon as I opened my mouth to call for help, I heard a cold male voice. I just spent a night with the person I love. There's no need to get so angry. It was Simon. He was only wearing a loose dark blue thick knit sweater. His neck was slender, and the broken hair on his forehead was slightly messy. Thomas was stunned for a moment when he heard the voice. He stared at Simon's handsome face, and then his hand loosened. I took the opportunity to break free and threw myself into Simon's arms. Simon didn't push me away. Instead, he held me even tighter and whispered in my ear, "Be good. Leave it to me, Dr. Simon." Thomas almost gritted his teeth as he spoke. Obviously, Thomas recognized Simon. "Is that man you? Do you treat patients in bed now?" After saying this, Thomas was stunned for a few seconds. Then he reacted. "Juliet, are you really sick? I thought you were acting." I thought. Thomas's tone wasn't as angry and arrogant as before. It seemed to contain a hint of nervousness and guilt. My heart trembled, and my eyes became a bit moist. Deep down, did I still hope that Thomas would care about me a little bit? However, the next second, my last hope for Thomas was completely shattered. Juliet, you're going too far. Not only did you pretend to be sick, but you also found a man to slander Thomas's reputation. I turned around and saw that Helen had somehow stood beside Thomas. Thomas had a look of sudden realization, and he obviously believed Helen's words. The moment I looked into Thomas's eyes, I even read a trace of joy in his eyes. Joy. Was he happy that his first love was speaking for him? Or was he happy that I would do anything to be with him? Indeed, Thomas believed everything Helen said. Because she was Helen, and I, even if I was as gentle as a cat, Thomas would still dislike me. Thomas said, Juliet, you really haven't changed at all. You're still full of lies. Think carefully about how to apologize to me and Helen. Huh? I shook my head and walked straight towards where Helen was. What are you doing? Thomas vigilantly protected Helen behind him. Passing by Thomas, I saw unconcealable joy and mockery in Helen's eyes. I took Helen's hand and put the bracelet that I had worn on my wrist for a long time on hers. Sure enough, it fit well. This was the bracelet that Thomas gave me when he confessed to me 4 years ago. The size of the bracelet wasn't right, but I was still happy for a long time to wear it. I went through a lot of hardships. I lost so much weight, from being as plump as a pumpkin seed to as thin as a sunflower seed. Enough. I feel sorry for myself. I was no longer sad. I raised my head and smiled at Helen. Helen, I wish you and Thomas happiness. Have children soon, 8 at a time. Then I turned to look at Thomas. Thomas, is your face drawn with a pencil? Will it disappear with a wipe of an eraser? After saying that, I raised my hand and slapped Thomas hard. Helen let out a cry and covered her mouth. Thomas stood there stunned, looking incredibly shocked. Simon frowned slightly. Just as he was about to say something, I dragged him and ran away in a flash. The sun was gradually setting in the west, and the sea was dyed a beautiful orange red. I leaned against the car door, blowing the sea breeze, and felt extremely comfortable. It wasn't just because I learned that the brain tumor was just a misdiagnosis. It was also because I was with Simon. That night, Simon was as happy as a fool, completely different from his previous cold and distant self. What about the image of a tycoon? He even pestered me to take photos and post them on Moments to announce his status. Announce our relationship. It's not $98. Not $198. It's only $998. If you don't want it, forget it. I teased him with a smile. Simon seemed to take it seriously. He stared at me with bright eyes and asked expectantly. Really? I was just about to comfort him that it was just a joke. But he seemed afraid that I would change my mind and quickly picked up his phone. Received $100,000. Why can't this be considered a tycoon? I didn't accept Simon's money, but I still updated my Moments. The person who accompanies me to watch the sea is gentler than the sea. The attached picture was Simon's stunning profile and our tightly clasped hands. Just after that day, the summer vacation started. I stayed at Simon's house for 2 days. After leaving Simon's house, I went to the mall to choose a birthday gift for Frida. Passing by a DIY cake shop and seeing that there was still some time, I went in, chose a style, and made a cake, which could be regarded as a belated birthday gift for Simon. Ding! As soon as the elevator reached the floor of my rented apartment, suddenly a hand pulled me out of the elevator. I was pushed hard against the wall in the corridor by a dark figure. I was just about to call for help, but my mouth was blocked by his overbearing kiss. Thomas smelled strongly of alcohol, but he was still very strong. I tried my best to push him away but couldn't. Just as his tongue was about to pry open my lips and teeth, I bit down hard. Hiss. Thomas winced in pain, and his grip loosened. I took the opportunity to run towards my home, but I hadn't run a few steps when I was caught by Thomas. Where are you running? Are you that ashamed to be seen? Thomas held me tightly and almost roared. My temper flared up too, and I threw the shopping bags in my hand at him. Thomas kicked the shopping bags aside and kicked the door hard. Did you go to the beach yesterday? I rolled my eyes at him. What's it to you? Thomas seemed very angry, and his body couldn't stop shaking. With that guy, I was extremely speechless. Wasn't this obvious? I looked at him quietly without saying a word. Thomas seemed to suddenly come to his senses. and his eyes were red. Are you together? Yeah, we're together, I replied coldly. After hearing this, Thomas let out a sigh, and his tone wasn't as tough as before. Juliet, you won. Break up with him, and I'll marry you. I've been with Helen during this time, but it's always you in my mind. So, break up with him. Fine. It seemed that Thomas still thought I was deliberately making him angry. Thomas, do you think you're choosing a concubine here? I'm not like you. When I like someone, I like them completely. I pursed my lips and said impatiently. Thomas's eyes were bloodshot. He grabbed the hand that was holding the cake and said in a hoarse voice, "You have to die by my side even if you die." I wasn't prepared for a moment, and the cake fell to the ground. I was just about to scold Thomas when Simon came back. He first looked me up and down, as if to confirm whether I was injured. Then he forcefully removed Thomas's fingers that were tightly gripping my wrist one by one. He said coldly, "Get lost." Simon followed my gaze and saw the cake on the ground. His eyes lit up, and his originally serious expression softened. "Is this for me?" I nodded a bit dejectedly. "Yeah, I made it myself. But it's broken." Simon squatted down, picked up the broken cake, and even took a bite directly. Leaning next to me, he squinted his eyes and said to me, "My wife's cooking is really delicious." I took his hand and went into the house. When I was about to close the door, I heard Thomas mumbling with his head down at the door. But making cakes was something learned for me. I met Thomas again at Frida's birthday party. Juliet. Frida was surprised to see me. She picked up her long dress that dragged on the ground and ran towards me, hugging me tightly. "Juliet, I thought you weren't coming." "Sorry, Juliet. Frida looked full of apology. Just as she was about to say something, I interrupted her by giving her the gift. "It's your birthday. How could I not come?" "I know that very well." I comforted her with a smile, and Frida finally relaxed. She looked at Simon beside me. "Hello, young master. I'm Frida, Juliet's best friend." Simon reached out his hand to shake hers and smiled just as happily, imitating Frida's way of speaking. "Hello, Miss Yi. I'm Simon, Juliet's most beloved husband." "Me, Frida." It seemed that Simon couldn't maintain his previous image of a tycoon anymore. The guests at the party arrived one after another, and Simon was also dragged into socializing because of his status as the young master. I stood on the rooftop connected to the banquet hall alone, holding the cake that Frida had custom-made for me, and looked at Frida on the stage who was like a little son. My little sister who used to go crazy with me has grown up, becoming better and better. I really felt quite emotional. "Juliet." A deep male voice came from my side. I didn't need to turn my head to know who it was. Although it was a birthday party for Frida's family, it was actually a business event. So I wasn't surprised at all that Thomas would come. Compared to Thomas, who stood tall and decent with Helen that day, he couldn't hide the exhaustion in his eyes today. I knew he was having a hard time because of Helen. But what did it have to do with me? "Juliet, talk to me." Thomas held out his hand to me. It was the bracelet from that day. The palm of Thomas's hand was red, as if he had clenched something tightly. "Put it on again." "Okay. I was wrong, Juliet. I shouldn't have. Let me court you again. Forgive me, Juliet. I won't do it again. I'll love you well. I won't have any more involvement with her." This was really disgusting. I put down the cake in my hand. I reached out and took the bracelet from Thomas's hand. I looked at Thomas. His originally haggard and dull eyes suddenly lit up. I chuckled and directly threw the bracelet out of the balcony. Plop! The bracelet fell into the pond under Frida's villa. Yo! 3 points. I don't know when Simon stood at the door of the rooftop, leaning against the doorframe with a smile in his eyes. Thomas seemed to be completely anxious. His already haggard face became even paler. Thomas's lips trembled, and he anxiously explained to me, "Juliet, I didn't give the bracelet to Helen. I really was wrong. I shouldn't have not believed you. I was stupid before. I didn't know you had sacrificed so much for me." I watched as Thomas slowly closed his eyes, and his eyes couldn't stop shaking. Helen came back to him this time, not because of love or affection. It was because there were problems with Helen's parents' company, and her father was imprisoned for economic crimes. So she had to hold on to Thomas as a life-saving straw. As for what Thomas would suffer, Helen didn't care at all. She had always been like this. Just like when she targeted me with photoshopped rumors for Thomas's sake back then. She had always been someone who didn't care about other people's lives. And Thomas knew that I would be sad if he did that. But he still did it. This wasn't called making a mistake. This was called making a choice. You chose Helen. I pushed Thomas away, walked up to Simon, and took a deep breath. Thomas, it's too late to take action now that the child is dead. You only try to get rid of the snot when it reaches your mouth. And you only turn the car when it hits the wall. Pfft. Simon laughed out loud and even clapped his hands. Well said. No wonder you're my wife. As he spoke, he took out a big mahogany box from behind his back and opened it. There were all kinds of bracelets inside. Simon glanced provocatively at Thomas, who was standing still. Pick one. Throw it away if you don't like it. The commotion Thomas and I caused that day was a bit big. I greeted Frida with Simon and then left first. Simon, let's go and have fried dough sticks. I'm in a good mood today. Simon lowered his eyes, and a faint smile was always on his lips. Okay. After that day, I blocked all the ways Thomas could contact me, including Mark. One day, Simon hadn't come back from work yet. I was lying on the sofa, holding my phone and browsing pictures of handsome guys. I was sighing that I was really blinded in the past. I had Thomas in my heart and eyes, and I missed so many good opportunities. I was so absorbed in it that a pop-up window flashed. It was a message from Frida. I opened it and saw a screenshot of Thomas's moments. You like the sea, and I once loved you. I was just about to call Frida to complain, but she sent me a live broadcast link. I clicked in and found that it was Thomas. On the screen, Thomas was kneeling by the seaside and saying word by word, Juliet. I didn't recognize my own heart before. I was wrong. I was really wrong. I promised you before that if I hurt you, I would jump into the sea. Today I'm here to fulfill that promise. I slammed the phone screen shut and cursed in my heart. If Thomas can jump into the sea, a pig can climb a tree. What are you doing? I was immersed in chatting with Frida and scolding Thomas. I didn't notice when Simon came home. I brought you small wontons from the restaurant you like. Simon took off his coat, sat next to me, and put his arm around me. I didn't hold back and continued to complain to Frida. Suddenly, Simon snatched the phone away. I turned my head, a bit angry, and was just about to say something. Simon's sudden kiss was like a storm, catching me off guard. It wasn't as gentle as before. He held me tightly, not giving me the slightest chance to escape. My mind went blank, and I could only follow his lead. After a long time, Simon stopped. His fingertips rubbed against my earlobe, and his voice was hoarse and aggrieved. Juliet, don't mention him anymore. Even if it's just to scold him. It's not allowed. I got up and kissed his forehead. Okay, I won't mention him anymore. Simon's originally aggrieved expression disappeared instantly. He reached out and pressed me underneath him. His eyes were a bit red. He held my waist and kissed my neck softly. His breathing became heavier and heavier. I pushed him away with force. Go take a shower. Simon scratched his head aggrievedly, mumbled an, okay, and then went upstairs to the bathroom. Suddenly, it started to rain heavily outside. I was just about to pick up my phone to check where the takeout was. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. I thought the takeout I ordered had arrived. I opened the door excitedly, but it was Thomas who came into view. I knew it. If Thomas can jump into the sea, a sow can definitely climb a tree. Thomas stood at the door in the rain, biting his lips and saying nothing. I felt sorry for him and pulled him towards the edge of the eaves. The originally dull eyes of Thomas rippled again. Juliet, I was wrong. Forgive me. I swear I will treat you well for the rest of my life. I sighed. Thomas, it's all in the past. Don't do this anymore. I'm already engaged. I don't know which part of this sentence stimulated Thomas. He suddenly shouted angrily. Juliet, you're a flirtatious woman. I was at a loss for words and didn't know what to say. Just then, Simon came downstairs wearing a bathrobe. No wonder it's thundering and lightning outside. It turns out there's a scumbag making a vow, Simon said. Simon walked up to me, gently put his arm around my waist with one hand, and seemed to be holding something in the other hand. Be good. Wait a moment. I leaned against Simon's warm embrace, sniffed the faint fragrance on his body, and completely forgot about Thomas. Simon, who had been speaking softly to me just now, turned serious and stuffed the things in his hand to Thomas. It was a document and an umbrella. Take this, fill it out, and wait in line. Epilogue. That day, when we fled from the school gate, I sat in Simon's car and cried loudly. Simon just drove silently without saying a word, until I gradually stopped crying. He sighed and said, "Finished crying?" I didn't respond to him. Instead, I asked him, "Simon, do you know, I really liked Thomas before. I liked him so much that I forgot what I was really like." I clearly remembered that in my freshman year, I received a message from Thomas confessing to me. No, it couldn't really be called a confession. It was just a notice, telling me that he wanted to be with me. I was so excited that I almost jumped up in class. Frida held me down tightly to prevent me from becoming famous at school. I only found out later that Helen had abandoned Thomas and gone abroad. And Thomas approached me just to make Helen jealous and also to fend off the pressure from his family. But I still naively believed that Thomas's heart could be warmed. It turned out that it could indeed be warmed. However, the person who warmed his calm and cold heart would never be me. Do you still like him? Simon suddenly stopped the car and reached out to turn my head towards him. His gaze was firm and burning. "Ah, why are you asking this all of a sudden?" Simon's sudden question caught me off guard, and I instinctively wanted to perfunctorily brush it off. "Juliet, answer me. Do you still like him?" Simon suddenly became serious. I took his hand away and answered him firmly. "No, I don't." Simon's originally tense body suddenly relaxed, and he curved his lips into a smile. "Then I'll tell you another piece of good news." I stared at him in confusion. Simon leaned in and whispered in my ear, "You fool. You're not sick at all." What? My mind went blank with a bang. "No. Didn't you say that I had a brain tumor?" After a few seconds of silence, Simon calmly retracted his gaze and continued driving, saying slowly, "I said it was a suspected case. Who knew? You only listened to half of what I said. The examination results are out. You're fine." I had a black line on my face and silently took out my phone to delete the will that I had spent all night writing. I looked out of the car window as the sky gradually darkened and the streetlights on the street slowly turned on. "So, where are we going now?" I pursed my lips and asked Simon in a bad mood. "On a date. You've already received my resume. Can't you let me have an interview to show my performance?" TSK. This was never ending. It wasn't that I was completely attracted to Simon's good looks. In fact, I had long felt that Simon was familiar. After Thomas called out Simon's name, I was even more certain that we weren't strangers. By the seaside, I pretended not to care and asked him about it. Simon was very nervous, but he still frankly told me everything. I was the famous little fat guy in junior high school. But at that time, my parents hadn't divorced yet. I widened my eyes and looked at him in disbelief. Was he that little fat guy? The one who was bullied by many people? The change was really huge. Simon said that he had been paying attention to me for a long time. Back then, everyone in the class didn't like him, disliked him, and said that he was fat and ugly. I'm scared. So he mustered up the courage to tell me that he wanted to be friends with me. He thought I would refuse, but I actually agreed. And for a long time, I accompanied Simon to play with Frida and protected him until he transferred to a school in another place. And we completely lost contact. So, did you like me at that time? Not really. I was too young then and didn't know what love was. I looked at Simon, who was lowering his head in front of me, and felt a bit sad in my heart. "Why didn't you contact me after you transferred to another school? I thought you didn't like me and Frida." Simon's originally lowered head suddenly lifted. His eyes were shining and there seemed to be tears in them. No, Juliet. I didn't dislike you. Both of you. It's just, at that time, my mother was deeply stimulated and sent me abroad. She didn't allow me to come back to the country and cut off all my connections with the domestic side. I was just about to reach out and touch his head to comfort him. But Simon took the opportunity to grab my wrist and gently pull me into his arms. "Juliet, after I came back, I tried my best to get news about you. Until later, I finally found you. But they told me that you had someone you really liked. I was really sad. I didn't even want to wish you happiness. So I would rather not appear in front of you. At least I could deceive myself." Simon buried his head in my neck. I could constantly feel his breath, and his voice was still soft and gentle. "So, Juliet, is it okay? Can you give me this opportunity? I wrapped my arms around Simon and replied sweetly, okay,